Welcome to Blooming Out, a locally produced public affairs program discussing the issues and events affecting the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community of South Central Indiana. Blooming Out is written and produced by a team of dedicated volunteers and financially supported by listeners like you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Helen Harrell. Welcome to another edition of Blooming Out, Indiana's only queer public affairs talk show.
And I'm Victor Kinzer. Blooming Out is the only local and one of very few national radio shows created specifically by and for the LGBT and ally communities. We are committed to bringing you the latest issues, people, and events reflecting queer life in South Central Indiana and the world beyond.
Well, tonight we are looking forward to talking with the director of the Buskirk Tremley Theater, Danielle McClellan, about her upcoming Girl Stories performances. And Victor will have a new edition of Coming Out of the Deviant's Closet.
Indiana Black Pride board member Steffion Grimes will talk about the organization, and in honor of Black History Month, will be telling us about Baynard Rustin. And Eric D. and Emily C. are back with another edition of By Connection.
But first up tonight, we have regular guests, local attorney Sean Lemieux and Bloomington High North Counselor Greg Chafin in the studio with another edition of Youth in Peril. Welcome back, Sean.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me back again.
Greg called at the last minute, and he has, like many of us do, bronchitis, and so he won't be on the show tonight. He did, however, being a very responsible person, send me kind of a script here of things that he wanted to say. So I'm going to read what he wrote here, and then perhaps we can talk about a couple of these points.
Sure.
Only weeks after he agreed to sponsor the United Students Group at North 8 years ago, one of the union reps came to him and warned him that other faculty might assume that he's gay, and that he could also be putting himself in jeopardy related to the morality clause, a contractual clause, he said, related to teachers, counselors, faculty staying in line with general community morality. He said that other teachers had lost their jobs when their personal lives had been judged to be outside of the community's moral norms. However, he had heard that this come up at counseling and teachers conferences as a reason that many are afraid to become sponsors of GSAs or come out as gay adults. And one of his questions is to you, Sean, does a morality clause actually exist in schools?
In school contracts, in many of them, if not all of them, it's not at all uncommon, especially in public employment kinds of fields, to have what are called morality clauses as part of an employment contract. It's not unusual at all. In fact, in Indiana, in the education statutes, there are provisions for canceling teacher contracts, and one of the reasons is immorality.
Well, who defines the morality?
Well, and that's a good question. It's not defined in the statutes, and it's not defined specifically in contracts, and it's a question that courts historically have struggled with. These kinds of clauses have been around for many, many years.
Now, in the case of Bloomington, Bloomington has employment protections, so in that context, if you're employed by the Monroe County Community School Corporation, which serves Bloomington, and someone were to say, you know, we found out for this reason, XYZ, you are gay, you are lesbian, that you are outside of this standard morality, I mean, it seems to be in direct conflict with the laws that are in place, so isn't there a decent legal argument there?
Oh, that would absolutely help, sure. I think there are, and we can talk about this as we go through the program, but there are a lot of reasons why it would be problematic for schools to fire teachers because they're gay or lesbian. But when we're talking specifically about the morality clause, Victor, you're exactly right. I mean, we're looking at what the community morality is. Well, when the community has, through its legislative body, the council, created an ordinance that says gays and lesbians in our community are entitled to the same rights as everybody else, it would be hard for a school system to argue that being gay or lesbian is immoral within the meaning of that contract. Okay,
but that's going to certainly play out differently in a community that doesn't have protection, like domestic partner benefits or hate crimes protection or that sort of thing, employment discrimination protection. And there's several counties right around us that don't have that. So what options do teachers have if someone comes to them and says, well, we suspect that you're a lesbian and we're going to fire you?
Right.
And they might not say that, of course, that directly. They'll come up with some other reason, but everybody will know that that's really the reason.
Although often we're sort of still in the infant stages of employment discrimination cases by government employees based on sexual orientation. So in many respects, schools or other government employers aren't that creative as they are in gender discrimination and race discrimination, you know, where if that's what they're going to do, they tend to be a little more creative in how they go about it. It wouldn't be unusual, I think, especially in these early stages, for someone to say, we don't think there should be gay teachers, so we're firing you for that reason. I would expect that more than expect them to initially be a little more circumspect about it, which would be a good thing for the employer to the extent there's anything good to come out of that. It provides certainly more evidence to help them. But there are both First Amendment protections and equal protection, or 14th Amendment protections under the federal Constitution, and there are some similar provisions under Indiana's Constitution that I think would provide some protection to those teachers in those circumstances.
Well, for example, like what? I mean, because I know that people have been fired in Indiana for just those reasons, and if they don't make a legal case out of it, if they don't take any action, say they move out of state, then nothing happens. And it seems to me frequently laws are made just because somebody does bring a suit for some issue. Are there any laws underway right now that, I know there's hate crimes protection laws moving through at state level and at the federal level, but is there anything happening that protects employees, for instance, in this state?
Specific statutes?
Yes.
No, Indiana does not include sexual orientation or gender identity in its state non-discrimination laws. And there are no similar protections in federal law, though the Federal Employment Non-Discrimination Act is once again working its way through Congress. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask also in terms of precedent and protections, the legal precedents in terms of GSAs being protected. Does that provide any sort of reasonable legal argument, or are they too different? You know,
those are two different things. The laws that we talked about last time about protecting GSAs and allowing GSAs to form along with other non-curricular groups are separate from employment protection. So back to Helen's question about specific laws prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation, there are none that cover Indiana. There are some localities, Bloomington, Lafayette, some other places throughout the state that have them locally and debate internally in their own councils and human rights groups locally whether those ordinances can actually be enforced or whether they're voluntary compliance, but there is no state law or federal law covering those provisions. So private employers can fire employees for being gay or lesbian because private employers aren't restricted by the Constitution. But a public employee has a First Amendment right to express who they are. They also have an equal protection right. So if a school wants to fire a teacher for being gay, they're going to have to, at a minimum, show a good reason why that gay teacher needs to be fired, why sexual orientation is a relevant classification for the purpose of being a teacher. And that's going to be pretty hard to do. And generally the reason is people don't like them. And bias is never a legitimate state interest, so the state can't use its coercive power to enforce private prejudices.
But of course, once all that transacts, it's going to be a very uncomfortable situation for that teacher to try to continue in the classroom. If this kind of thing came out and parents and students are going to harass them and things like that, it'd make it very difficult. Who actually writes the morality clauses? Is that the Board of Education that does that, the school board? How does that happen? All
contractual clauses are the result of negotiation between teachers' unions and school boards. So that's how they come about. They agree on what the terms of that contract is going to be.
When teachers are hired, I guess they're given a copy of a contract that would include, I guess, a morality clause, if you want to call it that, or a behavior clause. I mean, see, it seems to me it's very difficult for somebody to say